Have you ever looked back at a relationship and thought, I don't even recognize who I became for her? You were grounded, you had vision, you had your path, but somewhere along the way you started compromising. You let small things slide, you silenced your needs, you told yourself, it's just love, I'll adjust. But the truth is, it wasn't love, it was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of not being enough, fear of losing her. And that fear turned you into a version of yourself that you never agreed to become. See, most men don't fall apart all at once. They break slowly, silently, in the name of love. And by the time they realize what they've lost, it's not just the woman who's gone, it's their dignity, their peace of mind, their sense of self. But what if I told you that it doesn't have to be this way? What if I told you that real love, wise love, stoic love doesn't demand your soul as collateral? In this video, we're not just going to talk about dating. We're going to talk about discipline in love. We're going to talk about boundaries. We're going to talk about what smart men do not do with women. These are not just modern dating tips. These are timeless principles rooted in the philosophy of men who ruled empires, who lost everything, who rebuilt their lives from ashes. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. And these 5 lessons are going to change the way you see yourself in relationships forever. Because a relationship should not be a battlefield where your self-respect goes to die. It should be a sacred space where the best version of you rises to the surface, not vanishes. And if you've ever lost sleep over someone who didn't even know your worth, if you've ever compromised your peace for the sake of keeping a woman who was already halfway out the door, if you've ever asked yourself, why do I give everything and feel emptier than ever, then this video is not just a guide, it's your wake-up call. Smart men don't avoid love. They approach it with clarity, courage, and unshakable values. Let's begin. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever stayed in a relationship not because it was good, but because you were afraid of what your life would feel like without it? That aching silence when the phone doesn't buzz, that quiet apartment that used to be filled with laughter, that moment you realize it's just you, your thoughts, and the echo of your own footsteps. Most men, whether they admit it or not, aren't afraid of heartbreak. They're afraid of solitude. But here's the lie you've been told your entire life, that being alone means something's wrong with you. Our culture rewards constant connection. If you're single, people ask what's missing. If you enjoy your own company, you're called selfish, distant, or cold. But the Stoics, they saw solitude as a weapon, a training ground. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He didn't fear being alone, he cultivated it. He retreated into himself not to escape the world, but to understand it better. And more importantly, to understand himself. Let's bring this into our time. There's a man I once mentored, David. Mid-30s, successful in business, well-spoken, attractive. But his relationship history was a train wreck. He would jump from woman to woman not because he was a player, but because silence terrified him. He told me, when I'm single, I feel like no one sees me, like I disappear. You know what I told him? You don't disappear when you're alone. You reappear. The man you were supposed to become finally has space to breathe. Take Nikola Tesla, the man who lit up the modern world. Do you know what he said? Be alone. That is the secret of invention. Be alone. That is when ideas are born. Tesla spent most of his life without romantic ties, not because he was unloved, but because he valued his mind over emotional chaos. Now, I'm not saying you should be a monk in the mountains, but if the thought of being single makes you anxious, that's not love, that's addiction. Addiction to attention, addiction to distraction, addiction to the illusion that someone else will complete you. But no one completes you. They can compliment you, they can support you, but the work, the real work, that's yours. Here's the truth. Being alone is not a weakness. It's the proving ground of strong men. If you can sit in a room by yourself, face your inner dialogue, your regrets, your fears, and come out the other side stronger, then you're ready for love, not desperate for it. So the next time you find yourself tempted to stay in a lukewarm relationship just to avoid loneliness, remember this: better to walk alone in truth than be accompanied by someone who makes you forget who you are. Because solitude is not the enemy. It is the sanctuary where your greatest strength is forged. There's a certain type of man who prides himself on being the rock in the relationship. He listens. He absorbs. He fixes everything: her bad day, her trauma, her outbursts, her cold silence. And every time something breaks, he picks up the pieces even when those pieces aren't his. Because that's what a good man does, right? He sacrifices, he gives, he stays no matter how much it costs him. But here's the dangerous lie buried inside that noble idea. A man who constantly sacrifices his peace to keep someone else emotionally stable is not strong. He's silently dying inside. We've romanticized the idea of unconditional love so much that men have learned to tolerate emotional chaos as proof of commitment. But real love does not demand your sanity in return for her comfort. Let's revisit the Stoics. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." If you believe that suffering is part of love, that being mentally exhausted is just part of the game, that being emotionally neglected is just a phase you must endure, then you're not in a relationship. You're in an emotional negotiation with someone who profits from your silence. The Stoics taught us that our peace of mind is sacred, not optional, not negotiable, not a gift you hand out to someone who hasn't earned it. I once worked with a man named Eric, mid-40s, a founder of a tech company, incredibly intelligent but broken inside. He had been in a relationship with a woman who was constantly testing his love. She would go silent for days, accuse him of being too logical, and lash out anytime he tried to create boundaries. He stopped going to therapy because she said he was too focused on himself. He pulled away from his family because she didn't like how judgmental they were. He began drinking at night just to sleep through the fights. But the moment that broke him, when she told him that his calmness made her feel unseen, that she needed more drama, more chaos, more emotion. And so in trying to save her, he lost himself. He ended up in a hospital. Not because she hurt him physically, but because he sacrificed his mind in the name of keeping her warm. Love does require effort. It requires patience, forgiveness, and yes, sometimes sacrifice. But not the kind that erases you. Not the kind that turns you into a punching bag for someone else's trauma. Not the kind that keeps you walking on eggshells just to keep the peace. You are not a rehab center for someone's unresolved issues. You are not the emotional fire extinguisher for someone who won't take accountability. Here's what you need to remember. Strong men do not sacrifice their mental health to prove love. They protect it so they can love from a place of strength, not survival. Because a woman who truly loves you will never ask you to choose between her and your peace. She will add to it, guard it, build it with you. And if being with her feels like you're walking through a battlefield every day just to keep her happy, that's not love. That's war disguised as intimacy. Protect your mind like a castle. Let no one storm its gates without purpose or honor. You cannot love fully when you are emotionally bankrupt. You cannot give your best when your spirit is fractured. And you certainly cannot lead your life, your goals, your legacy while drowning in emotional turmoil. Love should light you up, not burn you down. It starts with something small. You text her. She doesn't reply for hours. You start checking your phone every 5 minutes. You try to act calm, but inside you're unraveling. Your heart races when she finally responds. Not because you're excited, but because your self-worth was hanging in the balance of 3 dots on a screen. Sound familiar? This is how it begins. Not with fireworks, but with tiny moments of dependency disguised as romance. And before you realize it, you're no longer the man steering your life. You're a satellite forever orbiting her world. Marcus Aurelius warned us. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. But when a man begins to center his existence around a woman, her moods, her schedule, her validation, he slowly surrenders that power. And it's not just about love. It's about identity theft, a theft you commit against yourself. Because love shouldn't shrink you. It should expand you. Let me tell you a true story. One of the most powerful men in the world, King Edward VIII of England, gave up his throne to marry Wallis Simpson, a divorced American woman. At first, the world called it the greatest love story of all time. But as the years went on, their life together turned into isolation, regret, and quiet suffering. Why? Because obsession masquerading as love always leads to one thing: imbalance. He gave up everything not for love, but for attachment. And in doing so, he stopped being a king long before he left the throne. I know a man named Liam. Ambitious, talented, built a promising career in finance. Then he met a woman who challenged him emotionally, and it felt intoxicating. At first he admired her passion, but soon every decision started revolving around her. He canceled client meetings for spontaneous dates. He skipped workouts, ghosted his friends, abandoned his goals, all in the name of being available. 6 months in, she told him she missed the man he used to be. The irony, she was the reason he stopped being that man. But the truth is, he let it happen. Men don't usually fall into obsession overnight. It's a slow drip. You start giving more than you receive. You start justifying emotional inconsistencies. You start measuring your day based on how she feels, not how you feel. That's not love, that's submission. You weren't born to orbit someone else's existence. You were meant to be the center of your own. Let me speak plainly. If she becomes your sun, you'll forget your own fire. If you orbit her, you'll lose your axis. And if you keep bending, one day you won't remember what it felt like to stand tall. Strong men love deeply, but they never disappear in love. They stay rooted in their mission. They stay connected to their circle. They stay loyal to their values. Because obsession is not passion, it's panic wearing a pretty face. A man who centers his life on a woman will always be off balance. The Stoics didn't teach men to be cold. They taught them to be in control. And a man who knows his worth will never chase someone just to be seen. He will live in a way that makes being seen inevitable. There's a moment quiet, almost unnoticeable, when a man begins to shift his life to match hers. At first it seems small. You cancel a trip with your friends to spend more time with her. You pause a side project because she says you're too busy. You start adjusting your goals just a little to make the relationship more convenient. Then one day you wake up and realize you're no longer on your path. You're walking hers, Seneca said. If a man does not know to what port he is sailing, no wind is favorable. Translation: it doesn't matter how fast or hard you're working, if you're headed in the wrong direction, you're just getting lost faster. This is what happens to many men in relationships. They trade their vision for validation. They trade their ambition for approval. They shrink their dreams so they don't intimidate her. But here's the truth. A relationship that costs you your identity will always bankrupt your soul. Daniel was a brilliant architect. He'd spent a decade building his career, one dream project after another. Then he met Lisa. She was kind, charming, but deeply insecure. And slowly she started making him feel guilty for loving his work. He'd come home late from presentations and she'd say, "Do you care more about buildings than me?" She pressured him to quit freelancing and take a boring corporate job, one that kept him home more. At first he resisted. Then, to keep the peace, he caved. He lost passion. He stopped designing. His creativity died. 3 years later, she left him. Not because he wasn't committed, but because he was no longer the man she fell in love with. And the truth, he wasn't. He'd become someone else, someone tame, tired, and lost. You see, when a man gives up his path for a woman, what he's really saying is, "I believe her love is more important than my purpose." But here's what the Stoics would tell you. No love is worthy if it demands you abandon the very reason you were put on this earth. You weren't born to mold yourself around someone else's insecurities. You were born to build, to lead, to create. And the right woman will never ask you to abandon that. There's nothing noble about self-erasure. If she truly loves you, she'll stand beside you as you pursue your path, not in place of it. She'll support your ambition, not sabotage it. She'll admire your drive, not resent it. Because the man who strays from his path to please another will one day look in the mirror and not recognize the face staring back. You do not have to choose between love and purpose, but if you ever do, choose purpose. Because purpose will still be there when love gets confused. The world needs more men who walk in alignment, men who refuse to downplay their fire to make others feel more comfortable, men who understand that compromising who they are is the fastest way to become invisible. So protect your mission, live your truth, and if someone cannot walk beside you on that path, let them go. You meet someone new, it's exciting. She texts you every morning, you talk for hours, suddenly your evenings are booked, weekends gone. The gym buddy you used to train with, you haven't seen him in a month. Your mother's calls unanswered, your boys' group chat muted. You tell yourself this is just the honeymoon phase. I'll reconnect later. But sometimes later never comes. And before you know it, the people who were the pillars of your emotional support have faded into silence. Not because they changed, but because you stopped showing up. The Stoics understood the importance of community, fraternity, and constancy. Plato once used a brilliant metaphor. He said, "People are like soil. Some help you grow, others stunt your roots. Your family, your closest friends, your mentors, they are the fertile soil of your life. But too many men, especially in romantic relationships, rip out their roots for a single flower. And by the time that flower withers, there's no soil left to return to." Jamal was one of the most solid men I knew, veteran father of 2, loyal to a fault. When he started dating someone new, everyone was happy for him. But we started noticing the pattern. He stopped showing up for poker nights. He ghosted when one of us was going through a breakup. He didn't come to his own brother's engagement party. Why? Because she didn't like his friends, because she said his mom was too involved, because she didn't want to share him. Fast forward 2 years, she left him on his birthday, and when he finally tried to reach back out to his old circle, it wasn't hate that greeted him. It was silence, because love is not an excuse to abandon your tribe. Men crave validation, and in the early stages of love, a woman's attention can feel like oxygen. So when she pulls you into her world, you willingly leave your old one behind. You think you're prioritizing the relationship, but what you're really doing is shrinking. You're cutting off the roots that gave you strength, identity, and balance. And without those roots, you fall faster when things go wrong. Let me be absolutely clear. A woman who truly loves you will never isolate you. She will never turn you against your family. She will never ask you to choose between her and your tribe. Because healthy women understand that a man with deep, meaningful relationships is a man with depth, loyalty, and character. You don't have to give up your crew to prove your commitment. You don't have to sacrifice your blood ties to earn love. And you sure as hell don't need to destroy your foundation just to build a castle on quicksand. Protect your roots. Because when the storm comes, and it always does, it's your roots, not your romance, that will keep you standing. Call your brother. Grab a beer with your friend. Visit your parents. Stay connected to the people who were there before her, because they are usually the ones who will still be there after her. Let's take a moment to step back. Forget the romantic chaos. Forget the toxic patterns. Forget the pain of chasing someone who doesn't value you. Let's talk about what love looks like when it's wise. Let's talk about what love looks like when you haven't abandoned yourself. Because here's the hard truth. Most men are taught how to get love, but very few are ever taught how to protect themselves inside it. You've been trained to pursue, to impress, to sacrifice. But who teaches you how to keep your soul intact while doing it? The Stoics did. To the Stoics, love wasn't about clinging, performing, or losing oneself. Love was about virtue, about sharing life with someone in a way that enhances who you are rather than erases it. Epictetus wrote, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them." So what if we judge love differently, not as a desperate search for wholeness, but as a conscious act of sharing strength? What if instead of falling in love, we stood in it with clarity, standards, and unwavering self-respect? Smart love is not perfect, but it is peaceful. It doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't punish you with silence. It doesn't demand you dim your light so someone else can shine. Smart love respects boundaries. Smart love admires your ambition. Smart love doesn't make you choose between your purpose and your partner. It celebrates both. Smart love doesn't cost your identity, and it never ever costs your dignity. So here's what I want you to ask yourself brutally, honestly, unapologetically. Have I ever given more than I had to someone who gave me less than I deserved? Have I ever shrunk my dreams because I was afraid of intimidating her? Have I ever called chaos passion just to justify the drama? Have I ever chosen the thrill of being desired over the discipline of being respected? If the answer is yes, you're not broken. You're just waking up. And that's what this video is about. A smart man doesn't run from love. He simply refuses to lose himself in the name of it. He doesn't chase. He attracts. He doesn't beg. He sets standards. He doesn't orbit her world. He builds his own and invites her in. Love is not meant to be a prison you decorate. It is meant to be a garden you both grow in. And if she cannot grow with you, she's not your partner. She's your distraction. So from this moment on, make a decision to never again give your peace to someone who hasn't earned your presence. To never again water someone else's garden while yours turns to dust. To never again abandon your mission for a moment of emotional survival. You were not born to be soft for the sake of approval. You were not born to bend so others could feel taller. You were not born to beg for love you have to explain. You were born to lead with your heart and your mind. To love like a man who knows who he is, what he offers, and what he'll never compromise again. That is smart love. That is Stoic love. That is your next chapter. Thank you for watching this far. If this resonated with you, don't just click away. Reflect. Share this with a man who needs to hear it. And most importantly, live it.